Hello, this is Team 1139 with our presentation of Problem C, People Ruin Everything. I am Colin Largan, and my co-participants are William Gabriel and Gael Malone. Our coach is Mr. Andrew Hostetler, and we are from the Episcopal School of Jacksonville, from Jacksonville, Florida, of the USA. And before we get started, I would like to thank the Simeo team and Mr. Brian Winkle because this audio messed up, to put it simply. Now, our assumptions are that the time that humans were a part of the ecosystem was long enough for there to be multiple generations of animals. None of the animals leave the ecosystem, and no animal goes extinct. These are just the assumptions are just our prerequisites pretty much for our model to be modeled after. Okay, so our model, this is a piecewise function. Our model is a piecewise function, and this was done because of the predicted butterfly effect that Gael will now explain for.
Our model consists of piecewise functions to demonstrate the butterfly effect that occurs when humans move to a new area. Humans make space for themselves by cutting down trees and hunting animals, which affects the habitats of certain other animals and causes them to migrate somewhere else and compete for a living space. That's it.
Thank you, Gael. So now, onto our variables. The dp over dt is the rate at which the population changes, rather it either being positive or negative, and we substituted that for the k value. Instead of saying a e to the kt power, we just substituted dp over dt because it's equivalent. Our a1 value is equal to 1, and we just did that so you can see that there's a coefficient in front of the e. Our lowercase sigma, the first with the subscript 1, is our first standard deviation, because this is a derivative of a bell curve. And our T1 and T2 are the events at which event 1 and event 2 occur on our graph, which will be explained later when we show our graph. A2 is greater than A1, which means it's greater than 1, because we predict that this graph will decrease faster at this point, in this interval compared to the first interval. So sigma 2, the second lowercase sigma 2 is our second standard deviation because we had another bell curve. We used x instead of t because they're interchangeable. It doesn't really matter which one you picked, so we picked x. Use that one more often. Now, with the graph, William will now explain why we used a graph with the number of interactions between animals on the y-axis and time on the x-axis, rather than population or total population of animals on the y-axis and time on the x-axis.
Hello, my name is William, and I'm going to be explaining why our differential piecewise function displays the number of interactions between animals in an ecosystem versus time, rather than the total population of individuals in an ecosystem. So we primarily wanted to measure how these number of interactions change as humans enter and then eventually leave an environment, and the total population is already accounted for in the number of interactions between these animals. Additionally, the total population is directly proportional to the number of interactions. So as the total population of animals increases or decreases, the interactions between them will also increase or decrease respectively. So this mainly gives us a better picture of the changes and fluctuations of these number of interactions on given intervals or time periods as these humans enter and then leave an environment.
Thank you, William. So now, the yi variable is equal to the number of interactions between animals before humans came and messed everything up in the ecosystem, changed it drastically. From 0 to T1, the humans are just cutting down trees, establishing themselves, hunting animals, doing all the normal human stuff. This is lowering the interactions between animals because the population is decreasing and animals are trying to stay safe and not get shot. And however, once the trees have been cut down to a certain point and humans have expanded enough at T1, then the animals will start having to compete for space in the ecosystem, which would mean that the interactions between animals would be higher because they'd be in closer proximity with each other, and they would have to compete for space, like how Gail mentioned earlier. And then after a lot of them have died, as you see in this bell curve, after the peak, the derivative becomes negative and decreases at a fast rate. And now at T2, it continues, but then starts to level out because of behavioral changes, and new generations. They have started to adapt to human presence and their new living conditions. So then it'll level out, it'll be level compared to everything else. And then at T3, that's when humans leave. So then animals will now spread out more, but then animals will start to go back to the way that they were before, because animal instinct, and they have to live the way that they have to so they can live, and that's how nature works. Nature generally tries to correct itself. So with that in mind, we predict that it will start to level out at a level higher than the constant between T2 and T3. However, the constant here will also be lower than the pre-human constant, or yi, because of the lost skills and just everything lost in between those generations. And so that's where we believe that the ecosystem will be affected, and it will be affected forever by humans, because animals had to adapt to that situation. However, it will fix itself. It won't fix itself completely, but it will patch itself up. Like it won't be able to heal the wounds that humans created. However, thank you. And also, that graph was a graph of y, not y prime. So the di over dt was a graph. The di over dt is not that, is the derivative of that function, or the piecewise functions that created that graph. Thank you, and thank you for giving us this chance again to remake it, because the first one was really bad because it had no sound. Thank you very much.